Great. Welcome to episode 1042 of the Multifamily Collective, where it is our mission to tease out human potential in the multifamily space. I'm your host, Mike Brewer, and I am extremely excited about today's guest, Mr. Tony Sousa. Tony is a regional manager with Embrey Management Services located in San Antonio, Texas. And his path, like many of our paths into multifamily, took an unconventional path, if you will. He began as a professional journalist and a host in Los Angeles, California. He's originally from San Jose, California, and began his property management career in Burbank, where he advanced through a series of promotions from community manager to marketing and training and operations. And it sounds like what the path that we mostly take, all of us take. So that happened to be with Avalon Bay Communities and Sequoia Equities. And then Tony and his lovely family relocated to the Lone Star Estate in October of 2014. As a senior business manager for Alliance Residential, Tony oversaw all residential operations for Elon. If I mispronounced that, Tony, certainly correct me in a minute. Premier luxury community in Northwest San Antonio. Tony's wealth of experience and industry knowledge, coupled with his engaging and entrepreneurial approach to business, serves the EMS leadership team well. Tony is a graduate of the University of Southern California, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, good to be here, man. Yeah, you got virtually everything right. Pronounced everything correctly, and yeah, it's always weird to listen to yourself, but or your bio, but you're pretty much right.
Excellent, right on. So before we dive into the quote that I want to lead today's show with, because we are here to tease out human potential in the multifamily space, you are the most interesting man in property management. So back in 2011, you did a spot with the most interesting man in property management. And I am going to link it up in the show notes because I think everyone should see this. It's fantastic. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, man, it's actually, yeah, I mean, it still has legs, right? I mean, we're 10 years out, you're still referencing it, so back, I'll give you the origin of it kind of in brief. I was out to lunch with Lisa Trapp, who's now this chief operating officer at CWS, and we were back then. We were with Sequoia Equities in the marketing department, and I had stories about my acting days and different things like that. And she's like, Tony, you're like the most interesting man in property management I've ever met. And then sort of light bulb goes off, and she's like, you want to do it? I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we were out there shooting, if you recall, Don't Get Chestered. A series we did early 10 years ago when nobody was really kind of doing stuff like that or video, and so we took some chance, and then we had an extra day to shoot and said, hey, do you want to throw on a beard and sort of lay off the well-known Dos Equis commercials, and it's been cool, man. It's a lot of my leasing consultants, a lot of my team asked me about it, like, did you know you're on this video? And I said, that's not me, that's my twin brother. But yeah, it's had a lot of legs, and 10 years later, it's still referenced. So it was cute. It was a fun idea, and yeah, I still look back on it, definitely positively.
It's gold, and for those of you who haven't seen it, who get the opportunity to see it when we post it up to these show notes, you'll definitely enjoy it, and I hope that it sparks some creativity in yourself. It's awesome. So Tony, I am a big fan of the original quotes that you put out on LinkedIn and other social channels. And the one that you posted, I believe it was last week, really struck me. And it reads like this: most people are unaware of the role they play in their own shortcomings. And so I want to unpack that a little bit, because I think that is true. In fact, people sometimes can't get out of their own way. But kind of talk to me and maybe couch that in your own journey and the world of professionalism in business or acting or wherever it makes most sense. Unpack that for us a little bit and tell us what you were thinking when you.
Yeah, I think every quote that I try to put out, and I appreciate you noticing that they are genuine from the top of mind. A lot of people ask me, like, how do you come up with this stuff? Do you spend hours thinking about it? And I really don't. I think it's in between a car ride or something happens professionally or personally, and I'm probably quicker than most on a smartphone, on an app, and able to whip it together and push it out in real time. And so for whatever they're worth, hopefully, sparks of inspiration or thoughts just for whoever may read them. But for this one, I think it goes back to what you said. I mean, I think we're unaware of so many things, both personally and professionally. And my old boss used to say, especially when I was new in my position, is, Tony, you just don't know what you don't know. and I never really had a good reply to that because she was right, and it was a mentor of mine, and I admired her greatly, and still do. But she would say that, and say that often, early in my position, and it's right. You don't know what you don't know, but being aware of as much as you can be, and surrounding yourself, I think, with really smart people that are willing to call you out, and also being willing to be honest with you, even when it hurts, is key. And I tell my teams all the time, learn and cultivate how to eat constructive criticism for breakfast. I mean, it's the best, most hearty breakfast you could eat on a daily basis. Now, don't be too hard on yourself is key as well. But that evening drive home, or for a lot of us, some people are now working from home. I mean, find that time to kind of digest your day, as you well know, and kind of think through the decisions you made in the day, and how you can maybe improve upon them tomorrow. And if you do that, I think consistently over years and decades, as you well know, Mike, being successful as you are, you could really make some great progress, and I think identify some of those shortcomings that maybe you weren't aware of, prior, but now are. But there'll always be shortcomings and things you're unaware of as we speak today. Again, you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So
that's right. Do you have any sort of real stories from your past where you fought through that struggle of acknowledging a shortcoming, recognizing it for what it was, and then going through some exercise with yourself, be it journaling or whatever it might have been for you?
Yeah.
And then how you applied that lesson to become a better professional?
Yeah, it's actually one that I learned as a young actor. My acting coach asked me to ask 10 of my friends and family what they thought of me before they got to know me. And it was a perception exercise.
Sure.
And I will tell you, I did not get the answers I thought. And I use this story often, and I actually I ask this in an interview question pretty frequently. How do you think you're perceived? And leasing consultants, or whoever I may be interviewing, some are able to answer pretty quickly. And that tells me high level of emotional intelligence, and that they're self-aware. And in sales, you have to be really self-aware. But for me, I got some responses that I did not like, to put it nicely. A lot of it had to do with hair. A lot of it had to do with, you turned out to be a nice guy, right? Which, always had me kind of unpack that a little bit and be like, what was I giving out that you didn't think I was? Now, mind you, I'm a 20-something in Los Angeles as an actor, right? I'm like, okay, fit the profile of every, what, right? So I'm like, well, but what I learned as a young adult and young professional is you have the ability to control who you are, who you want to be known as. And as I learned more about this process, you don't have to also create some sort of brand or persona that you're not. You actually can. The most authentic brands, both in business and personally, are the ones that are the most authentic people. And so over the years of life and experience, and professional and personal, I've cultivated, purposely who I want people to know, what I want people to know about me, but also genuinely, if you met me on a podcast like this, or, in my property, that what you think of me, maybe on LinkedIn or through the persona, is genuinely who this person is. Or if you've met my family, they would also say, that's who he is. Take it or leave it. That's who my husband is. My obviously family will always be very honest. So, but that was a cool life lesson to learn as a young professional, as a young person, to realize, okay, you're giving off some things that you maybe don't like, but you have the ability to control that, and then also, create, what people think of you in a very authentic way. And if you come across slimy or inauthentic, you can still change that. You don't have to just be, what people think of you. And that was eye-opening for, a young person. For me at the time, was I don't just have to be what people think I am. I need to exude more of who I believe I am, and that's what I started to do. And that's really, I think, where a lot of the stuff that I just kind of push out and exude today is purposefully done to say, this is what I think and this is who I am, like it or not. And I've really tried to take an authentic approach there. And I found the more authentic my messages are to my teams or online, the more engagement that I've gotten.
It's so true. And I want to play on that. Let's stay in this camp for a little bit. I sort of playing off the word of authenticity. You've always struck me as somebody that's very comfortable with vulnerability. And you posted something, I want to say this was the week that COVID sort of became mass in society, meaning it was out there. The news was talking about it in a way that was, certainly to the downside. But you posted recently, a year ago today, I made a decision that transformed my career and who I want to be as a leader. Remember, courage isn't developed in the absence of fear, but through it. And the picture you put up was you cleaning an elevator, and you went on to tell a story about how you really experienced some anxiety leading up to that moment of actually going outside, putting yourself at risk, right? Because nobody really knew what was going on at the moment. But tell us what was going through your mind at the time. You always spelled it out a little bit there, but I think it's a powerful story for leadership and team members.
Yeah, I tell people I'm a recovering COVID fear addict, and I was, like many, very, very concerned about what was happening, what the virus was doing. But I felt called in that moment early on to participate in what my teams were doing. And even if it's crazy, because that was an emotional moment for me, even if it was at my own peril. And at the time we didn't know.
Right.
And I remember the messaging back then, and was everyone stay in place. If you don't have to be on site, this wasn't just an Embrey thing. This was, across all platforms across the world, right? Stay safe, and ultimately at that time, you didn't know if you yourself were a virus carrier, right? So, not only did you want to stay safe, but you didn't want to expose other people. And so I understood that message, but at the same time, I also knew, my maintenance team and my office team were doing rounds of cleaning, exposing themselves, some of which were scared to do that, some of which, weren't as scared. I happened to be probably on the more fearful side initially. But I felt it was important that and as I've always told my team, if I ask you to do it, I should be willing to do it myself, whether that be pick up a piece of trash or kill the coronavirus on a doorknob. If it was there, we've turned out it's not as prevalent there. But at the time we didn't know, and so I had to stick to those moral guidelines, those moral leadership guidelines, that if I was willing to pick up a cigarette butt, or you were, then I was, and if you're willing to clean a virus off a door handle, I would have to be willing as well. And so I didn't get to pick and choose which of those events I was willing to do and not willing to do based on position or rank. And because of that, I just operated out of my own consistency and belief system that, again, if I'm willing to do something I'm asking you to do, then in all situations, I should be ready to do that.
And so I'm really curious, and if you don't want to go down this path, I totally understand it, but I'm a big believer that when people come into the work world, we don't have this neat little coat hook over in the corner where they get to take off their problems, put them on a hanger, put them, and put them back on when they walk out of our business offices. But in my head, you had to reconcile some family commitment or commitment to your family in the way of being there as a healthy father and a healthy husband, et cetera, and not exposing your family. How did you walk yourself through the calling to go in and do that? And in my head, the same calling you have to be there as a good steward for your family. And I don't know that there's a right answer, but I'm very interested in how you sort of thought through that.
Yeah, I would say for me, I was fortunate. My wife early on did not share the same fears that I did. And so she was evaluating the process at a different stage than I was. And I think she was able to process, through her anxieties and fears and messaging better than I could at the time. And so for me, and obviously this probably makes sense now that I describe this story.
Sure.
For me, this was a challenge for me to overcome, and my wife supported it along the way. And I just recall in that post, and I recall at the time, because it wasn't that long ago, obviously, really thinking about what, even having second thoughts about why I even signed up to do it. Because fear and anxiety is a real thing. Why did you sign up to do what you're scared to do? And there's sometimes those little voices in your head or on your shoulder that say this, regardless of your fears, this is the right thing to do in this moment. And you have that moment to face your fears and build strength and courage through it. And that's where that quote really comes from. And I recently listened to some podcasts from Navy SEALs and other people that really rang true to me. They said, listen, we're not more courageous than the next guy. Courage is a muscle. And we just happen to flex it and work it out more than you, or more than your average citizen does. Usually your citizen isn't faced with challenges like we're often faced with. And if they are, they maybe run from them or don't challenge them. But as a Navy SEAL, we don't have that option. And so our courage muscle is just more developed than your average person. And so, for me in that moment, it was an opportunity to do some courage reps, you might call them, to strengthen my courage in myself.
I love that. I really appreciate you sharing that. I do. I think that's powerful for the audience. Which leads into another thing that you posted recently, emerge stronger, faster, wiser. How would you encourage our audience, both video and we translate this to a podcast or we convert it over to a podcast, how would you encourage them to emerge stronger, faster, and wiser post-pandemic?
Yeah, obviously, there's a lot to unpack there. But after we've all gone through what we've just gone through, to emerge slower, dumber, and whatever the
weaker,
the antonym is to the other, weaker, would be a complete loss of the experience that we just had. And so I almost feel as though it's your only option to emerge from something like this. And I try to encourage my teams because, we still face challenges on the property with resident situations or fiscal challenges, but I remind them that we just came through a 100-year pandemic and we're able to overcome it with grace and just class and strength. So if we can do that, can we not solve this basic situation that's happening here? And to be honest, I see that twinkle in their eye of like, you're right, bro. Like we just battled through a pandemic that we had no idea what was happening. We were able to work through it, keep everyone safe, keep our residents safe, and we're okay. And this little situation, sort of on the magnitude, on the scale, is this big. And then we go down the road of logically solving the problem of what it is, but it's a mindset, right? It's, I can solve this, and I'm confident I can, as opposed to, oh wow, this seems really tough. I've never thought about this. I don't know if I can figure this out. And I tell my associates all the time, especially when they're like, well, how'd you know how to do that, or how'd you, and I tell them, listen, there's a lot more people that have a lot more experience than me, but what I want to encourage you, and what I think of in my own abilities, is I'm not afraid of any problem. I might not have the most experience as someone else, but I really believe in my ability to critically think through situations, utilize my business sense and my logical senses to say, what's the right thing to do here? And then confer with other people that are smarter than you and more experienced, and use people as sounding boards, as I do, my supervisors and executives, and they're great. But believe in yourself that you too can solve this problem. You're smart enough, and you're put here for a reason, and you're here for a certain time to do this.
Yeah, that's, it brings to mind the phrase personal agency. And I think a lot of people, and I'm going to make a generalized remark, so I'll preface by saying that you give up your personal agency way too easy, right? And I think it's likely predicated on the idea that you don't want to feel responsible for the consequence that comes as a result of the decision you made by overcoming the fear that you have, right? And so it's it is in my head time to take back personal agency, right? And to your point about COVID, wow, what an exercise in that muscle to overcome fear, right? I mean, if you sit back and think about the past year, you have overcome a lot in the way of your personal life and business life to get to where we are today.
Well, and absolutely. And you'll see on some of my posts, I mean, it's hashtag to the moon. There's something about overcoming something that large in your own mind, and everybody has their things. But if you're able to overcome some of these notable obstacles in your life, the emotional and confidence boost sends you to the moon. And so and you just have to be careful on your way to the moon, just you obviously you feel strongly about certain things, and that's definitely what I'm processing now, right? Because your confidence and your belief in self is the strongest it's ever been, and so, but you still need to obviously continue to learn and process and take wise advice and wise counsel from those you need to. But from a confidence, emotional booster, overcoming something like that, and for me personally, it was incredible. And I liken it probably to people that overcome physical and emotional and spiritual challenges in their life, from overcoming cancer to other things that you just feel, there's nothing I can't overcome. And it's a really intoxicating feeling. There's obviously some drawbacks and some dangers to it, but try to keep those in check and keep people around you that kind of keep your feet to the ground, which my family definitely does with 3 little kids. Don't think more highly than you ought, Dad. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's so, it brought to mind as you were working through that, there's a good balance that you need to keep between confidence and humility, right? And
right.
the extent you can stay humble, whether that be by way of your family or by way of other outside circumstances or influences, you definitely have to take a dose of humility along the way to keep that confidence in check, because it can get out of control.
Yeah, and I've also posted some stuff on this too, and I have to subscribe to my own literature, if you will, but make humble pie your favorite dessert, right? If you're going to eat constructive criticism for breakfast, make sure you're eating humble pie for for dessert. So easier said than done. Both can have a bitter taste if you don't get used to them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you make a really good point there. You do the best you can, and you have to exercise a little bit of grace. I think you led by basically implying that you have to be graceful with yourself along the way. We're all flawed, right? We're all flawed. We all make mistakes, and to the extent we can pick ourselves up and keep going, that's the real key, right?
Yeah, my wife and I talk about that a lot. She came from a family structure where perfection was attempted to attain. I'm fortunate that I didn't come from that, so I'm not striving for this perfection, which I've never subscribed to as an actual real thing in life. And so it's helpful, but I know for many, trying to be perfect in all things can sometimes, I think, hurt you in the long run.
Yeah, that's right. I want to pivot. You said something, saying no is more valuable than saying yes, and I'm deeply interested in that. It resonates with me in one way, but I'd like to hear your take on that and how that might play well with the audience here.
Well, as you know, Mike, we're taught early on as professionals and young professionals, never say no to an opportunity, always say yes, and whatever that is. And it's kind of like the phrase "fake it till you make it," which I've found to sort of be a bunk statement. I mean, there's some things that help you get in the room, but ultimately, being more comfortable saying no. I've found, and it's not always no directly, right? It's there's a lot of different ways to say no without saying no, but everybody is fighting for your time, your effort, your resources, and you only have so much. And as you well know, I have 3 little kids that are very active in sports and school, and obviously I'm married, and so you have to prioritize, and you can't say yes to everything. And I've had people around me, professionally and personally, that say yes far too often. And often they'll come to you privately and say, "Why did I sign up for that?" And my only response is like, "I don't know why you signed up for that. You didn't have time for that." But to say no there's an element of courage, and I think, and also addressing this people pleaser in all of us, that we want to say yes to make someone happy. you need to find a balance to that. Now, there's certain people within professional and personal situations you should strongly consider saying yes to. I totally get that part, and most of the time I am willing to try to help in any way I can. But there's also a lot of value in limiting yourself and your time to what's most important. And for me, it's a proverb of sorts of let your yes be yes and your no be no. So if I'm going to say yes, I'm all in, right? If I say no, I didn't say yes. so let your no be no. So
Yeah, that's very good. It brings to mind many times when I have been disappointed, of someone's behaviors or someone's actions, it's been because they didn't raise their hand because they were sinking with the ship, but they were sinking with the ship because they just took too much cargo on, right? And it's like, hey, you have personal agency, and saying no sometimes, I will tell you that I admire that more than you saying yes, because you have that courage.
And I'll on that metaphor, the drowning metaphor, and I remind my teams this because having small children, I've done a lot of kind of research on drowning and things of that with kids.
Sure.
When people drown, they often do it silently. So do children. And so in the movies, the kids splashing around and help, I'm drowning in the ocean, Jaws, whatever. In real life, sadly, and I have brother-in-laws that are in law enforcement. When people or kids drown, it's quiet, and it's often that way professionally.
Yeah, wow, I did not know that, but that's very true.
Yeah. I mean, it's having small children. The takeaway from me was, if it gets too quiet at the pool, there's a problem, right? But also professionally, we could draw a lot of correlation and metaphors. You don't hear from them. To your point initially, right? Like, no, just raise your hand and say you need help, because that's a lot of what our jobs are.
That's right. Wow, I'm really glad we teased that out. That's powerful. Two more things before we get to the end here, and I give you the opportunity to tell people where they can find you online. Awesome citations. I saw a picture where you're handing out awesome citations the other day. I'd love to know more about that.
Well, I'd like to think it was a completely thought of, independent idea for myself, but I came across not exactly the citations, but this concept, and I probably, like you and many that are listening, try to go out of their way to be positive, and we know, positive reinforcement will get you better results and better relationships. But I thought this was just a fun way to, catch my teams off guard and stick them with something, and this was a fun, I thought, very creative way to do that. And I'm always trying to find, as a leader, as a motivator, as a coach, I'm trying to find unique ways to catch their attention and disrupt the daily life. And in a lot of ways, I think what I do online is an attempt to be a disruptor of sorts as well. But also my day-to-day job, my day job is to also disrupt in a positive way for my teams and have them think and analyze issues in ways they haven't done before, utilizing the experience that they have, but at the same time, it's a whole, oftentimes these are different contexts that we're in and different set of variables that we need to look at differently. And so to keep your mind sharp in solving those problems, I'm trying every way to kind of continue to disrupt their day in a positive way.
I love it. We're going to link it up in the show notes if you haven't seen it on LinkedIn. It's very, very cool. Well, before I end every show the same way, before I do that, I do want to acknowledge you. I have been influenced by you in a very positive way over a long bit of time, dating back to the Most Interesting Man in Property Management. And I've really been inspired in the way of creating content. The whole reason I started this show and converted it over to video after several thousand narrated articles, or written articles rather, was that I wanted to get comfortable in front of a camera. I'm painfully shy in person, and this was just my way of trying to break into that. So I want to acknowledge you for being part of the journey and inspiring me to just step out and be more courageous than I was at that time. So, okay, that said, start, stop, keep. I want to know, in, let's say, the balance of 2021, or if you need to extend on it in 2022, what do you call it, a new habit? What do you want to start? What do you want to stop? And what do you want to keep doing?
Start. I want to continue to grow myself, just in a lot of different ways. I mean, you talked about your podcast, but I also want to continue to explore media and continue to be, obviously a thought leader in some ways, but disrupt the space, but also challenge myself in a lot of ways and disrupt myself. And so, and try different things that are out there that not only gets great business results for my day job, but also, if I can help, inspire the next guy. Stop. What do I want to stop? It's probably dietary. I try to be as disciplined as I can, but I gotta stop with sugar. I don't eat a lot of it, but I gotta reduce consumption. It's just, there's nothing good about it other than it tastes delicious. So I'd like to stop that. Let's see, stop. And what was the last one, Mike?
What are you going to keep doing that's working?
Keep doing. I hope to just continue to keep learning and growing, surrounding myself around, great people within my company, people within my family and friends, and just continue to grow and continue just to be aware of life around me, and not to just fall into what maybe others think is happening or what I should be thinking, to really continue to think independently, both professionally and personally, has been really an eye-opening experience over the last 15 months for me. Not to say I wasn't doing it before, but I'm definitely doing it now.
Excellent. Well, Tony, it has been an absolute pleasure. I know we've been trying to connect for a long time. We've talked online, but never in person. I think I met you first at NAA several.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But it was just a quick handshake and hello, and everything was busy. So
yeah, sure.
But how can people find you online, stay connected with you?
Yeah, so I don't hide like you. Professionally, yeah, continue to stay connected on LinkedIn. It's a great place to be. It's where I provide updates of what I'm doing, sometimes personally, but more or less professionally, and the company I'm growing with, and then of course, on social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well. So yeah, I think that's a great place to stay connected. It's fun to build those relationships digitally, and then at conferences and other places, be able to meet people is always really quite rewarding.
Definitely. Well, Tony, thank you again. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this, and we look forward to maybe some future conversations, maybe a round 2 or round 3 at some point.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Mike. Great to talk to you as well.
All right. Take care.